The bustling and loud hallway suddenly became silent as soon as the CEO entered. Everyone bowed to him and started working silently. Vine, who was working at her desk, quickly looked in the small round mirror on her desk. She perfected her already perfect hair and looked at her lipstick one last time before taking the files from her desk and going to Jungkook. Hi, sir, she said to him as she walked behind him. Jungkook looked back with a smile and said, Oh, Vine. Wait, are you wearing makeup? You're taking a leave again? Vine. No, it's what I do normally. Anyways, here are the files you asked for, she said while handing him the files, and they walked in sync as he took a look at them. Jungkook. Thank you. I'll take a look later. She smiled. At least she had an excuse to be near him. She had spent extra time ensuring every detail was perfect. They walked side by side, discussing the work, her heart in her throat with their conversation and the closeness between them while they were walking. But then suddenly her shoe hit the corner of a nearby table. In a split second, her balance faltered, and she felt herself rushing towards the floor. Instinctively, Jungkook turned, his reflexes sharp, reaching out to catch her. He held her from the waist, but the pressure was so much that she fell on him instead. He laid on the ground on his back and whined above him. Her knees hit the floor, but she didn't care. But because before she couldn't process what was happening, her lips were on his, and they accidentally kissed each other. The hallway fell into a stunned silence. Everyone froze employees, interns, even the custodians. Vine and Jungkook lay tangled on the floor with wide eyes. They gazed at each other, and none of them even broke the kiss. But before either of them could fully comprehend, someone grabbed Vine by the hair, yanking her to her feet. The force of the pull made Vine gasp in pain, but before she could process, a hand came down to harshly slap her across her face. It was Soojin. For months, Soojin had a crush on Jungkook. She was convinced that her polished beauty, family wealth, and seductive allure would win him over. She had always thought it was only a matter of time before Jungkook would be hers. Now, seeing Vine lying atop the man Soojin wanted, her jealousy boiled over. Without thinking, she slapped her, not caring about the people who were present or her self respect. Soojin, what the hell do you think you are doing? She shouted. Jungkook, who had been frozen, pushed himself up from the floor, his face darkening with anger as she watched Vine clutch her cheek, her eyes wide with shock and pain. Vine, shouldn't I ask you about that? What the hell are you doing? Her voice was cold and loud. Soojin, I am doing what is right. How dare you kiss your own boss? Are you taking advantage of him? Don't you know he's out of your class? People like you should stay far away from him. Don't you? At this time, Wang was going to slap Soojin back, but Jungkook's voice stopped both of them. Enough, Soojin. His voice was cold, a tone no one in the company had ever heard him use before. He knew she could protect herself. She was his choice. But he couldn't stop himself from getting involved after looking at her like that. He stepped between Vine and Soojin, placing himself like a shield in front of her. Soojin faltered for a second. Her eyes widened because he was shouting at her instead of Vine. Soojin, Jungkook, she was all over you. Let me say the truth. I was just helping you. Jungkook, I said enough. Who gave you the right to slap her? Did I ask you to help me? Who are you to meddle in my affairs? Susan's heart skipped a beat. Susan, what do you mean, Jungkook? I'm your friend and soon going to be your girlfriend. Jungkook, please, Susan. Jungkook, come out of your dreams and face the reality. Girlfriend, you should be glad you're a girl. If you were a boy, I would have already punched you a few times. A laughter was heard from the crowd, but it soon disappeared. Susan looked down and scoffed, barely holding her tears. Jungkook, I don't care what you thought, but if you ever touch her again, you will regret it. Susan's mouth opened as if to argue, but she didn't, because she knew she would only be embarrassing herself. She looked at Vine once in anger, and Vine was constantly staring at Jungkook with disbelief and some love in between. She nodded as she understood what was happening between them. She thought Vine must have made him fall into her trap, and that she lost. She turned and stormed off, the sharp click of her heels echoing down the hallway. The hallway buzzed with whispers, but Jungkook didn't care. His focus was entirely on Vine. Gently, he reached out, his fingers brushing against her cheek, where the redness of the slap still lingered. Jungkook, are you okay? He asked softly. His voice was now filled with concern, but Vine was still staring at him with disbelief. Jungkook looked at her, lost in her own thoughts. He snapped a finger in front of her eyes, making her come to reality. Jungkook, are you okay? Vine nodded, though her heart raced for a different reason now. His touch, the softness in his voice, it was overwhelming. Jungkook, I'm sorry about all of this. Let's go from here. She nodded slowly, and he held her hand. Without looking at her, he started walking towards his office. Vine's heart came in her throat when he held her hand. His grip was warm and gentle, sending a rush of emotions through her. They reached his office, and Jungkook opened the door, ushering her inside before closing it. He led her to the sofa, guiding her to sit down. Jungkook, does it still hurt? He said, crouching in front of her. His gaze lingered on her reddened cheek, and without thinking, he brushed his thumb gently across it. Vine's breath hitched. Vine, it's fine, she whispered, though the sting had long faded compared to the bulk of emotions swirling inside her. Jungkook, I don't know what's gotten into her, but I won't anyone treat you like that again. The sincerity in his words made her heart flutter, and she found herself gazing at him. They were so close. His warm breath blew on her face. They both stared at each other until a moment came when Jungkook's thumb reached her lips. Jungkook, you know, even if it was an accident, I didn't want to break that kiss. I almost wanted to kiss you back. Vine's eyes widened, unable to believe what he had just said. The man she admired from afar, the one she thought was out of her reach, was telling him that he wanted to kiss her. Vine, what do you mean? She whispered hesitatingly. Jungkook, I don't think I can control my cravings anymore. Your lips tasted heavenly, he said and kissed her on the lips. Her heart skipped a beat, and for a moment the world outside ceased to exist. She closed her eyes. She didn't want to think about anything else, and she kissed him back. After breaking the kiss, she was so shy. She only looked down. She wanted to say something before she could respond, Jungkook stood, holding out her hand again. Jungkook, come on. We need to get you some ice for that cheek. And maybe later we can talk about us. A shy smile spread across Vine's face as she took his hand, her heart soaring. For the first time, she felt that maybe he was feeling the same as her all the time, but couldn't say it just like her.